As the writer who covered the announcement of Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection only a few weeks ago during Nintendo's partner showcase, I had a lot of questions running through my head at the time. These two 6th generation titles, particularly Battlefront 2, are among the most beloved Star Wars games of all time, and they've also been available on Steam for many years. Their publisher, Asper Media, is still facing backlash from their Nintendo Switch port of Knights of the Old Republic 2, which was so poorly handled that it was initially literally impossible to finish due to game crashing bugs, and even after that was resolved, they cancelled a previously announced cut content expansion due to the base game taking too much development time to fix. What could this team bring to the table to entice players? Based on that reveal trailer, the intent seems to have been to create a definitive version of the game with updated features and all available content. Classic Collection boasts all content from every version and a supposedly robust update to its multiplayer infrastructure that will allow 64-player battles to be carried out online, pushing the game's emphasis on large skirmish battles to its natural extreme, as well as upscaled and remastered textures to fit modern monitors. The original PC version of the game on Steam definitely shows its age, with ancient network coding that makes playing online a less than seamless experience. All of this sounds like an excellent plan on paper, giving devoted players a new version of a classic title that improves upon the experience enough to potentially attract new fans, as EA allows the modern Battlefront series to slowly lose players without a new title or content patch in sight, could be a great way to bring new people in to see what all the fuss has been about for the last 20 years. On paper, anyway. You're probably aware that Battlefront Classic Collection is far less than the sum of its parts. While it mostly checks off the box of improving the original's visuals, more on that in a minute, it falls well short of anything resembling definitive in pretty much all other regards. I'm going to take you through my experience of playing Battlefront Classic Collection and what I saw online in the days following its release. Since the game is multiplayer focused, when I got my review key, I elected to start with Battlefront 2's single player game, which is generally comprised of solo missions on the multiplayer maps. I immediately noticed that the game's movie and pre-rendered game clips were not in any way remastered from the original titles. While this got fixed by the day one patch, the pre-rendered scenes still stick out like a sore thumb, as they were not re-recorded and run at half the frame rate of the actual gameplay. Disk space was a significant limit on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, so it was understandable that the original developer chose to prioritize the game itself over having better looking clips. There is no such limitation or excuse in a definitive modern remaster. I played through the first few missions and found them mostly acceptable. There are very goofy looking animations for many of the weapons, and it was oddly difficult to figure out how to switch to the classic third-person perspective, but I can confidently call the campaign playable. My partner, meanwhile, took a more experienced look at it and found tons of bugs and graphical glitches later on. Upon the game's actual release, I was hearing truly horrific stories even before I'd had the chance to really dig into the game's multiplayer component, the primary draw of any Battlefront release. I tried to block that all out, as even if I can't get a review done by launch, I prefer for things to be my own unfiltered opinion. So, finally, jumping into the game's online lobbies revealed that Battlefront Classic Collection is even more of a mess than I had originally realized. Firstly, even when choosing completely unfiltered quick play, the lobby system is so unstable that it took me multiple tries to successfully join a match without being booted out. When I finally was able to join one, I realized why the single player campaign was so insistent upon me using a first-person perspective. For context, the two original Battlefront games, in comparison with the two modern DICE-developed titles of the same names, were not designed as Twitch-based precision first-person shooters. They are, first and foremost, large-scale skirmish battlers meant to make the player feel like they're taking part in historic Star Wars battles. This idea was combined with the Call of Duty-style gameplay most popular in shooters today when EA commissioned Battlefield dev DICE to make the new series, but the originals simply were not designed for it. But Classic Collection certainly tries. The aim assistance, on which the original titles were heavily reliant, is turned off in multiplayer modes, leaving the combat feeling incredibly unwieldy. If your team is falling behind and you can't score enough points to unlock a stronger or more versatile unit because you can barely aim and there are no iron sights, there is very little you as a player can do, as the enemy team gets more and more overwhelming simply because they were able to pull ahead first. Worse, because the game was originally designed with the auto-targeting system in mind that would always display your target's health level as you fired, it's hard to feel like you're doing any damage at all if you're up against a foe with armor. The total lack of feedback on successful hits doesn't help this either. For the 3 matches I could stand to play, I felt like I was accomplishing absolutely nothing, and my partner, who has put hundreds of hours into the original, felt the same way. Battlefront lives and dies on its multiplayer modes, and what Asper has turned the multiplayer experience into is a half-assed attempt to emulate newer titles rather than presenting players with an authentic experience. This one change ends up making a world of difference in how the game feels to play, and it's an entirely negative one. Players can't get into matches easily, and those that can are likely not having fun. I think it's pretty telling that this remaster has been so unsuccessful that the original Battlefront 2 is not only beating it in concurrent players on Steam, but is currently experiencing a 3-year peak in player count and breaking 1,000 for the first time since 2020. Classic Collection is so bad that it is actively driving people back to the original game as it bleeds players, and given that the original is less than 1/3 of the price, I can't blame anyone for that. This is an unfinished, shoddy product that doesn't feel good to play, and that's if you can play it at all. Noisy Pixel is giving Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection a 3 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all of our future content.
Noisy Pixel.